So, um, I want you to picture the modern Great Dane for a second. Like, if you've ever seen one, or maybe you even have one sprawled across your entire sofa right now, you're probably picturing this incredibly elegant, almost aristocratic dog, right?
Yeah, usually entirely asleep.
Exactly. Looking like the ultimate gentle giant.
It's a really comforting image, honestly, and it's definitely the one most people associate with the breed today.
Right, but I want you to take that exact same dog
Hmm.
and just completely drop it into a totally different setting. Picture this dark, dense forest in Central Europe, maybe, 400 years
I
ago.
was setting the scene.
Yeah, thick undergrowth, really low light, and a hunting party moving super carefully through the trees. And walking right beside those hunters are these massive, lightning-fast dogs.
And they are definitely not out for a leisurely stroll. I mean, they are actively hunting wild boar.
Which instantly brings us to the first major disconnect in this deep dive. Because when I was digging into our source material to really decode this breed, the first thing I realized is that almost everything we assume about them, starting with the name itself, is just, well, wrong.
It really is.
I mean, Great Danes suggests that they're from Denmark, right? But there's not a single drop of Danish origin here, is there?
Not at all, no. The breed was almost entirely developed and refined in Germany over, well, centuries.
Wow.
Yeah, and if you use the true name that actually reflects its origin, you'd call it the Deutsche Dogge, which literally translates to the German dog.
So it's German.
Entirely. That's still the name they use in Germany today.
So why do we, and pretty much the rest of the English-speaking world, call it a Great Dane? It feels like this massive historical typo.
It basically is a typo, yeah. Before breed names were strictly standardized in the way we think of them now, large hunting dogs across Europe went by, like all sorts of regional labels.
Like whatever the locals decided to call them that day.
Exactly. You'd see old texts referencing a German Boarhound or an English dog or a Great Danish dog. It was just a tangled mess. They didn't neatly map onto one specific genetic lineage at all.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And then the French naturalist Comte de Buffon used the term Le Grand Danois back in the 1700s. And the English label Great Dane, it's just kind of happened to stick internationally before the standardized geography could really catch up with the dog.
That is wild. But that German origin, and specifically that original job of boar hunting, it really is the skeleton key to understanding this animal, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Because hunting a wild boar is not like flushing out a duck or a fox.
Oh, no. It's a completely different level of danger. I mean, a wild boar is heavily muscled. It has these razor-sharp tusks, incredible explosive speed, and they're famously vicious when cornered.
Right, they fight back.
Oh, they will not hesitate to turn and attack whatever is chasing them.
So you really can't just send a regular farm dog in there. You essentially need a canine decathlete.
That's a great way to put it.
Think about the requirements you'd need. You need an animal that can sprint like a track star just to catch the boar, wrestle like a heavyweight to physically hold it down, and then have the sheer courage of a gladiator to not just run away in terror when a 300-pound angry pig turns around to fight.
Right.
So how did breeders historically even manage to put three completely conflicting skill sets into one single animal?
Well, it took an immense amount of time. You couldn't just take a massive mastiff and cross it with a fast greyhound in one generation and call it a day.
That wouldn't work.
No, historical dog populations weren't these tidy, standardized breeds. What the German nobility did was engage in this really slow, deliberate refinement over hundreds of years.
Okay, so a very long-term project.
Very long. They blended the traits of these massive, incredibly powerful mastiff-type guard dogs with the traits of faster, much leaner hunting hounds.
Wow.
They were engineering an animal where every single elegant feature you see today had a violent, functional purpose.
It's like anatomy as technology. Because when you look at a Great Dane's long, stilt-like legs, it's so easy to just assume that was bred for runway elegance.
Yeah, pure aesthetics.
Right. But that was purely for reach and speed, right? They needed to cover ground rapidly.
Exactly. But speed is totally useless without stamina. Look at their massive barrel-like chest.
It's huge.
That deep chest is basically an engine room. It houses the enormous lung capacity and the enlarged heart that they required for the oxygen exchange needed to sustain a really high-speed chase through heavy, muddy brush.
And the head. I mean, they have these incredibly powerful, blocky heads and super thick necks.
That provided the holding power. I mean, this wasn't a dog designed to just corner an animal and bark until the humans arrived with weapons.
They had to get in there.
The Deutsche Dogge was expected to physically confront a furious wild boar, bite down, and hold its ground, taking the brunt of the physical trauma to keep the human hunters safe.
Which is just mind-blowing when you look at them today sleeping upside down on a velvet pillow.
It really is a contrast.
But eventually, society changed. We sort of ran out of wild boars to hunt on that massive scale. Forests were cleared for agriculture, right?
Right, the landscape shifted.
So this highly specialized biological warrior suddenly found itself completely unemployed.
Yeah, as the boar hunting declined in the 18th and 19th centuries, these dogs shifted out of the dark forests and moved into European estates and noble households.
From the mud to the manor, basically.
Exactly, but you can't just bring a gladiator into the living room without, changing its software.
Right, because that sounds dangerous.
It would be. And that's where the breeding priorities shifted dramatically. Breeders were no longer selecting for that raw, aggressive hunt and drive or the sheer physical ability to take down a boar.
What were they looking for then?
They started heavily favoring a much calmer, more predictable temperament. They wanted a dog that retained that imposing, massive silhouette to symbolize status and wealth, sure.
Because they look amazing.
Right, but one that could safely serve as a companion sitting next to the fireplace.
And thus, the famous Gentle Giant was born, which is a brilliant rebrand, honestly.
It worked incredibly well.
And to be fair to the breed, modern Great Danes are notorious for being deeply, deeply affectionate. They really are the ultimate lapdog reality.
Oh, for sure.
We've all seen a 150-pound Great Dane trying to fold itself into a tiny armchair, or doing that famous Dane lean where they just rest their entire body weight against your legs.
They are incredibly sweet and just so deeply attached to their people. But the danger here lies in how people interpret that word gentle.
Yeah, see, I always assumed gentle just meant easy.
That's a common trap.
But from the sources, it sounds like a sweet dog can actually still be a dangerous dog if you don't account for the physics involved. Like, you can breed a sweet temperament into a dog, but a sweet temperament does not negate gravity and mass.
It certainly does not.
If you have a dog the size of a small horse, physics dictate that even just a happy tail wag becomes a furry wrecking ball that can take out your entire coffee table.
That is the crucial distinction you have to make. Gentle does not mean no training needed.
Right.
A completely friendly, happy Great Dane can cause absolute chaos without a single ounce of aggression in its body. Force equals mass times acceleration, right?
Exactly.
So a happy wagging tail at that height. It basically functions like a baseball bat.
I actually read a veterinarian describing how an affectionate lean from a fully grown Dane can easily knock a small child completely flat on the pavement. Just by accident.
Just trying to be close. Or consider an adolescent Great Dane that gets super excited when you walk in the door. A friendly, joyful jump from an animal that stands 6 feet tall on its hind legs will take a fully green adult right off their feet. You end up with concussions and broken wrists, all from a dog that was really just trying to say hello.
So none of this is bad behavior.
No, it is untrained behavior executed with massive force.
So managing that physical force is absolutely paramount. But what really caught my attention when reading up on this is that managing this giant doesn't actually start when they reach 150 pounds.
No, it starts way earlier.
Right. The true challenge for an owner begins during this unbelievably fast, slightly terrifying period where the dog is actively building that massive body.
The puppy phase in a giant breed is it's unlike anything else. You are dealing with a rapidly shrinking window of time.
How fast are we talking?
A Great Dane puppy goes from fitting comfortably underneath your coffee table to literally standing over it in a shockingly short time frame, usually just a few months.
Which sounds cute, but our research points out something highly counterintuitive here. Most people would think, I want my dog to be big and strong, so I should feed it plenty of really rich food and extra calcium to help it grow.
People think that all the time, but faster growth is actually catastrophic.
Really?
It is deeply problematic. You should never, ever try to accelerate their growth.
But why not? Don't they need the fuel to build that massive frame?
They definitely need fuel, but they need it at a strictly controlled rate. Think about how bones actually grow. Dogs have these epiphyseal plates, growth plates, at the ends of their long bones. If a Great Dane puppy grows too fast, say because of excess calories or extra calcium, the bones lengthen at a rate that the surrounding tissues simply cannot support.
Wait, so the body gets out of sync with itself?
Exactly. The bone density, the cartilage in the joints, the muscle attachments, they physically cannot keep up with this rapidly lengthening skeleton.
So if you rush it, it's like you're building a skyscraper on a foundation of wet mud.
That's a perfect analogy. You get severe developmental orthopedic diseases. The bones can actually bow under the dog's own rapidly increasing weight.
That sounds awful.
It is. The joints become malformed, which leads to a lifetime of pain for the dog. They need a strictly balanced diet designed specifically for large breed puppies to force that growth to happen slowly and steadily.
Got it. But even if you manage the diet perfectly, this rapid physical growth still creates a very dangerous, awkward middle period for the owner, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
You end up with this immature giant. It's like a teenager who goes to bed, wakes up suddenly 6 feet tall, and then spends the next 6 months tripping over their own feet because their brain hasn't mapped out their new dimensions yet.
Yes.
How is an owner supposed to safely handle an animal whose physical size is just entirely disconnected from its brain development?
Early, consistent reward-based training is an absolute mandate. You have a dog that looks fully grown to the outside world, right? But mentally, it is still a very clumsy puppy.
So it acts like a baby but hits like a truck.
Exactly. It hasn't learned bite inhibition properly yet. It literally doesn't know where its giant paws are half the time.
So if you don't teach them loose leash walking when they weigh, say, 40 pounds.
By the time they weigh 140 pounds, they will physically overpower you through sheer momentum alone.
Wow.
If a fully grown Great Dane decides it wants to chase a squirrel across the street and it hasn't been trained to yield to leash pressure, you are not going to stop it.
You're basically just going for a ride at that point.
You are. The foundational obedience has to be installed while you still have a physical advantage over the dog.
That makes total sense. But once their brain finally does catch up to their body, you're still left with the reality of fitting a pony-sized animal into modern human architecture.
Yeah, that's a whole other challenge.
And this completely rewrites the rules of pet ownership for you. Everything about your daily life has to accommodate their scale.
It impacts what kind of car you drive, for sure, where you put your fragile belongings, and certainly where you live.
Let's actually talk about the space debate. Because the classic American dream dictates that if you get a big dog, you naturally need a big house with a massive backyard for them to run around in.
Right, that's the standard advice.
But I want to challenge that because the data from our sources suggests you can actually keep a Great Dane in an apartment.
Yeah.
That seems impossible to me.
I know it sounds impossible, but yes, they can actually thrive in apartments. Yeah, because their adult temperament indoors is generally very calm. They really are couch potatoes once they mature, so they don't need a massive indoor running track. Provided their exercise needs are met outside with walks, they will happily sleep in a small living room all day long.
Okay, but the size still creates unique logistical hurdles for apartment living, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about squeezing a dog the size of a small horse into a crowded elevator with other people.
Oh, that sounds awkward.
Or navigating super tight apartment hallways. Or dealing with neighbors who might have a real phobia of dogs. A Great Dane in a confined space can be incredibly intimidating to someone who isn't expecting to see one.
That's a fair point. But wait, if someone is listening to this right now and thinking, hey, I have a giant backyard in the suburbs, I'm good to go, I'll just leave the dog out there while I'm at work, why is locking a Great Dane alone in a massive backyard actually far more detrimental to its psychology than keeping it in a tiny apartment where it gets to act as the owner's shadow?
To understand that, we really have to look back at their original job again.
Back to the forest.
Back to the forest. These dogs worked in close, intense partnership with humans. They weren't livestock guardian dogs bred to sit alone in a field for weeks on end protecting sheep.
Right.
They were hunting alongside their handlers, which required constant visual and vocal connection. Because of that history, the modern Great Dane is what we call a Velcro dog.
A Velcro dog, I like that.
They are entirely dependent on social contact with their family.
So a big garden doesn't replace a relationship for them.
Not at all. A backyard is basically just a very large bathroom to them. It does not replace walks, mental stimulation, or, most importantly, human connection.
Interesting.
If left alone outdoors all day, they become incredibly stressed, destructive, and usually very noisy. They should never be kept as outdoor-only dogs.
Good to know.
However, because they are so deeply attached to their people, owners must proactively teach them how to spend time independently when they're young. Otherwise, they will easily develop severe separation anxiety.
It's a tricky balance. What about the rest of the household, though? When you mix a dog this large with kids or other pets, what are the actual ground rules?
Well, with kids, ground rules are absolutely mandatory. We go right back to that gentle myth.
Right, the physics.
Because the dog is so large, children often mistake it for a piece of furniture or like a jungle gym. Children must be taught early on, no riding the dog like a pony.
People actually do that.
They do, and that can severely damage the dog's spine. Also, no pulling ears and never waking a sleeping giant.
That seems like basic survival.
It is. Any dog, no matter how sweet, startled out of deep sleep, can snap instinctively.
Makes sense. What about the former forest hunter living with, say, a tabby cat?
They can actually live very peacefully with a known house cat, especially if they're introduced early and the cat sets clear boundaries.
Okay, so indoors is fine.
But you have to remember that residual hunting ancestry. A comfortable relationship with the cat on your living room sofa doesn't mean the dog won't suddenly try to chase an unfamiliar neighborhood cat that darts across the yard outside. Ah, so it's situational.
The prey drive might be dormant most of the time, but the wiring is still sitting there in the genetic vault.
Let's talk about the daily maintenance for a second,
Right.
because a lot of people think short hair means super easy grooming.
They definitely still shed. And their massive surface area means there's just a lot of hair, so they require regular brushing.
Right.
And then, of course, there is the drool.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some that look like they literally have shoestrings hanging from their mouths.
Drooling varies wildly depending on the shape of their jowls, honestly. Some are relatively dry-mouthed, while others will genuinely leave strings of drool on your ceiling when they shake their heads.
On the ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially right after drinking water or when they're waiting for food.
That is quite the visual. And what about the coat colors? Because you see the classic fawn color with the black mask, sure, but they come in some crazy patterns too, like the ones with the black and white patches.
Yes, that patched look is called harlequin. And there's also a mottled pattern called merle. But there is some serious science behind those coats. Really? Like what?
Well, unusual patterns like harlequin and merle involve highly complex dominant genetics.
How complex are we talking here?
So the merle gene basically dilutes random sections of pigment. If a dog inherits just one copy of the gene, you get that cool mottled coat.
Which looks great.
It does. But if an amateur breeder crosses two dogs that both carry the merle gene, a puppy might inherit two copies. That double merle combination doesn't just affect the coat, unfortunately. The same cells that create pigment also play a crucial role in the development of nerve endings in the inner ear and the eyes.
Wait, so the color of the dog is actually tied to their nervous system.
Completely. Pups born with two copies of the merle gene are very frequently born entirely deaf or blind, or with abnormally small, non-functioning eyes, a condition called microphthalmia.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. This is exactly why an owner must never prioritize a cool aesthetic color pattern over the structural health of the dog. Breeding these patterns requires real expert knowledge of genetics.
Which actually perfectly transitions us to the most sobering part of living with a Great Dane. Because caring for this dog physically doesn't just mean managing their space and wiping drool off the walls.
No, it doesn't.
It requires intense proactive vigilance regarding the specific medical vulnerabilities that are built into their unique anatomy.
The health risks are significant, and they're largely tied to the very anatomy that makes them look so majestic.
There is one condition in particular that comes up everywhere in the research as the absolute most critical threat to a Great Dane: GDV, or bloat.
Yes.
Can you explain for us the mechanics of what is actually happening inside the dog when that occurs?
Gastric dilatation volvulus. So think about that incredibly deep, cavernous chest we discussed earlier.
The engine room.
Right. Inside that chest, the stomach is suspended by ligaments, almost like a hammock. If the dog eats a large meal or drinks a massive amount of water and then engages in heavy activity, that stomach can actually start to swing like a pendulum.
And if it swings too far?
That's the volvulus part. The stomach physically twists on its axis, and when it flips, it seals off both the entrance from the esophagus and the exit to the intestines.
So nothing can get in or out.
Exactly. The dog can't burp or vomit, so the gases inside the stomach begin to rapidly expand, which is the dilatation or bloat.
It's basically a balloon just inflating inside the dog.
An inflating balloon that puts massive fatal pressure on the surrounding organs. But the real killer is that the twisting cuts off the vena cava. That's the major blood vessel returning blood to the heart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, tissue begins to die, toxins build up in the bloodstream, and the dog goes into cardiovascular shock very quickly.
Which is such a devastating irony for you to think about. The exact anatomical trait, the massive deep chest that was deliberately bred into this dog for survival to give it the lung capacity to chase a boar through the forest, is the exact same trait that makes them so medically vulnerable to a fatal condition today.
It is the ultimate double-edged sword of selective breeding. And for anyone listening right now, this is vital. GDV is a life or death, drop everything emergency. You have minutes, not hours.
What are the warning signs people should look for?
The most common sign is dry heaving.
Yeah.
So the dog repeatedly trying to vomit, but nothing comes up.
Okay.
You might also see them pacing anxiously, drooling heavily, looking back at their tight or swollen abdomen, and exhibiting obvious signs of pain. If you see this, you seek a vet instantly. No home remedies, no waiting to see if it passes.
Is there anything owners can do to proactively prevent it?
Yes, many owners proactively discuss a preventative surgery called a prophylactic gastropexy with their vet. Usually done when the dog is young, the surgeon essentially tacks the outside of the stomach directly to the abdominal wall.
So it anchors it.
Exactly, permanently anchoring it so it physically cannot twist. It doesn't prevent the gas buildup, but it prevents the fatal twisting part.
That sounds intense, but obviously very necessary. And that's not the only anatomical risk, is it? I mean, we are asking a lot of their hearts and their spines.
We really are. They are highly prone to dilated cardiomyopathy, or DCM. The heart muscle becomes thin and weak and struggles to pump blood effectively through that massive body.
Right.
They also face a much higher risk for bone cancer. And then there is a neurological condition called wobbler syndrome, formerly known as cervical vertebral instability.
What exactly happens with wobblers?
Imagine holding a heavy bowling ball at the end of a long stick. A Great Dane has a very heavy head supported by a long neck. In wobblers, the vertebrae in the cervical spine, the neck can malform or the discs can degenerate, which pinches the spinal cord.
Oh, that sounds painful.
Because the signals from the brain to the back legs get interrupted, the dog physically wobbles when it walks, and they can eventually lose coordination entirely.
The sheer mechanics of keeping a body that large running just takes a heavy, heavy toll.
Yeah.
And because of all these massive physical strains, they generally have much shorter lifespans than small dogs, don't they?
Sadly, yes. A Great Dane is considered a senior dog by age 6 or 7, and reaching 8 or 9 is considered a really long life for them.
And economically, it's a massive factor owners really must prepare for. Because everything scales up.
Everything.
They eat vastly more food, they require much larger doses of heartworm and flea medication, which obviously costs more. And if you need emergency care or surgery, the anesthesia and medication costs are significantly higher than they would be for, say, a 20-pound dog.
You are essentially paying equine medical prices for a canine.
That is a great way to summarize it. So after laying out all these intense physical, logistical, and financial realities, it paints a very clear picture of who this breed is actually meant for.
It definitely narrows the field.
It sounds like it is absolutely not for someone who just wants a cool-looking, elegant dog to boost their Instagram aesthetic.
Not at all. This breed requires an owner ready to commit to serious early obedience training. Someone with real financial preparation for the feeding and the inevitable medical care. And someone with an intense daily level of health vigilance.
The modern owner's job is essentially taking the physical courage, the raw power, and the sensitivity of a historic forest hunter, and safely translating it into a well-mannered family life. It takes real work, structure, and money to get that calm adult dog resting peacefully on the sofa.
It absolutely does.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, a quick reminder for you all. Keeping track of all those vet visits, feeding schedules, and health records is critical, especially for a giant breed. You can keep your dog's health records perfectly organized using the Vital Pet app. There's a link right in the description for that.
And we must state clearly that this deep dive is for educational purposes only. Please always consult a veterinarian about your dog's health, diet, and any medical decisions like the gastropexy we discussed today.
Absolutely. Always talk to your vet. So as we close this out, I want to leave you with something to really chew on. We started by picturing this dog in a dark European forest, built over centuries as a fierce biological weapon to hunt wild boars.
A canine gladiator.
Exactly. We spent generations sculpting them into gladiators. And then, as the world changed, we spent the next few centuries trying to fit that exact same massive, high-powered gladiator into a modern living room to cuddle with toddlers.
It really forces you to look at the animal in a completely new light.
It really does. And it makes you wonder, what does the Great Dane's journey say about our changing relationship with nature?
That's a good question.
Are we truly domesticating these magnificent animals to fit seamlessly into our modern, quiet lives? Or are we just asking them to play a domestic role they were never originally engineered for, while just hoping their biology doesn't betray them?
That is a profound question to consider every single time you feel the weight of one leaning against your leg.
Something to think about the next time you see a 150-pound lapdog trying to fit on a sofa. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.